and welcome to a brand new episode of the Daily Debate. My name is Ahmed Nader, and today we'll be focusing on the presidential activities of President Abdel Fattah AlSissi today and in the past week, as well as President AlSissi was received in Kuwait and met with the Emir of Kuwait, Sheikh Sabah Al-Jaber Al-Ahmed Al-Sabah. And of course, we'll be speaking more about the cooperation agreements signed between Egypt and Kuwait during the visit of President Abdel Fattah AlSissi to the Emirate. And we'll be speaking in the second part of the program on the economy of Egypt. We'll be focusing on the small and medium enterprises and the effects of the small and medium enterprises in the Egyptian economy, especially after implementing the economic reform program. And tonight, I'm honored to be having with me in the studio Dr. Mohammed Naguib Abou Zeid, the professor at the American University in Cairo. Thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
And we'll be starting straight away with a short break about the Egyptian military band, which is participating in the 12th Spasskaya Tower International Music Festival in Russia, before going to the first report. But we'll be going out to the first break, and we'll be returning once again to you on the Daily Debate.
الموسيقات العسكرية المصرية تشارك في المهرجان الدولي الثاني عشر سباسكيا تاور للموسيقات العسكرية بجمهورية روسيا الاتحادية. بمشاركة 13 دولة حول العالم. الشعوب تصوت لفرقهم. للتصويت ودعم الفريق المصري يرجى الدخول على الرابط التالي.
Welcome back. You're still watching the Daily Debate. That was a short break about the Egyptian military band participating in the 12th Spasskaya Tower International Music Festival in Russia. But we'll be turning to the main focus of tonight's episode, which is the visit of President Abdel Fattah AlSissi to Kuwait and the main agreements which were signed during the visit by President AlSissi and the Emir of Kuwait, Sheikh Sabah Al-Ahmed Al-Jaber Al-Sabah. And more details are in the upcoming report. So let's see it.
President Abdel Fattah AlSissi arrived on Saturday in Kuwait from Japan in an official visit to hold talks with Sheikh Sabah Al-Ahmed Al-Sabah, the Emir of Kuwait. President AlSissi arrived at Bayan Palace as he started a two-day visit to the Gulf area. The president was received and welcomed at Bayan Palace by Sheikh Sabah and Crown Prince Sheikh Naguib Al-Ahmed Al-Jaber Al-Sabah, Speaker of the National Assembly Marzouk Al-Ghanim, and Prime Minister Sheikh Jaber Al-Mubarak Al-Hamad Al-Sabah, along with other top officials. President AlSissi and the Kuwaiti Emir held official talks on boosting the bilateral ties as well as the latest regional and international developments. This is President AlSisi's third visit to Kuwait since he came to office in June 2014, as the two Arab countries have been witnessing a constant development in their ties in various fields. The first two visits came in January 2015 and May 2017.
إرث تاريخي وإنساني عظيم يجمعنا، علاقات امتزجت فيها الأرواح والدماء، وتشكل خلالها نسيج وثيق من الترابط والتعاون بين البلدين لينتج عنها شراكة استراتيجية في شتى المجالات. تشكل زيارة الرئيس السيسي إلى دولة الكويت تأكيداً على متانة نهج متكامل من العلاقات الأخوية والاجتماعية، ونموذجاً يحتذى به بين الأشقاء. وهكذا تترسخ العلاقات المصرية الكويتية وتزداد قوة وتميزاً لتلعب دوراً رئيساً في احتضان قضايا الأمة وتحقيق تطلعات الشعوب.
Welcome back. You're still watching the Daily Debate. Dr. Abou Zeid, the history of relations between Egypt and Kuwait, more specifically under the tenure of President Abdel Fattah AlSissi. This is the third visit of President AlSissi to Kuwait. The first one was in 2015, the second in 2017, and the third in 2019. How do you see the current status of bilateral ties between both countries?
At the outset, I would like to say that the Egyptian-Kuwaiti relationship has been and is currently witnessing perhaps its most strongest, let's say, kind of ties and exchange on every level and on all the domains of cooperation.
Yes.
Since President Fattah AlSissi took office as a president in 2014, as you correctly said, there has been 3 visits, and there were visits from high Kuwaiti officials to Egypt, several of them, and also on the side of several meetings, whether international or regional or Arab meetings or Arab summit, there has always been collaboration, talks, consultation between the 2 leaders and between the 2 governments in general. I would like also to say, as a side note, that perhaps many of the viewers do not know, there's a very active society for the cooperation between the Egyptian people and the Kuwaiti people. So the ties is not only, or are not only limited to the political level,
yes,
and the good and strong economic and social relationship, but also it's people to people. Also, you would notice today in the report that one of the people who also welcomed the president in his arrival is the head of the, let's say, like the Kuwaiti parliament. So it tells you how valued Egypt is for Kuwait. Of course, Egypt will never forget the Kuwaiti stand next to Egypt in its recent history when it was trying to change its current, or at the time, status into the real free Egypt that we all know. And also Kuwait will never forget Egypt's stand during the liberation of Kuwait years ago or decades ago. So we can give examples, not to tell any one of us how we've done or what we've done, but brothers, very strong relationships, and to speak frankly, what's going on the Gulf area with little bit of instability. Egypt is always there, to Kuwait, to Emirates, to Saudi, to all the brothers there, to be next to them to ensure their stability and their safety and their welfare in the years to come. So it's very strong relationship, and it's felt on every level.
Yes, focusing on the development of bilateral ties between Egypt and Kuwait, more specifically in 2011, or following the 2011 uprising and following the 2013 revolution against the Brotherhood terrorist organization. How do you see the development in bilateral ties?
First of all, I would say that Kuwait has been next to Egypt in this kind of revolution, and was supporting Egypt in its movement and in the economic, let's say, tough times, especially at the end of the era of the Muslim Brotherhood,
yes,
the terrorist organization, as you mentioned. And that was the time that really Egypt needed the strength of and the support of its brothers, the Kuwaitis, the Saudi, and other countries, many other countries. I don't want to forget anyone. And that was much needed, not only for Egypt, but for the whole Arab world, for the whole region. The threat was not only, it may have been focused in Egypt at the time, but it certainly has stretched its arm like an octopus throughout the entire region. One has witnessed also since 2014 there is a strong movement towards collaboration on various levels. The economic reform in Egypt, as you mentioned in your nice introduction.
Yes.
The companies that are uprising here and there. The Kuwaiti investment in Egypt that's on the rise. Of course, the whole Gulf area is also having its own challenges, economic and otherwise. But definitely, on the forefront is to be next to Egypt and to invest in Egypt. One thing great about Egypt, and I'm not talking only about that as an Egyptian or proud Egyptian, I talk about a fact. The Arab countries realize the very important role that Egypt plays, and also that Egypt is the safe haven, is the focal point of the Arab world. And heaven forbid, we wish well to everyone, to all the Arab countries, the African countries, our Muslim countries, all our neighbors and friends. But when there's a time of trouble, then Egypt is always there. Egypt is the place to go to. So supporting Egypt and maintaining this good relation is strategic and would remain strategic. One thing also I would like to say is that Kuwait plays a very important role in the Gulf area.
Yes.
The Gulf Cooperating Council. Kuwait is one of the strongest economies, strongest presence, has also its political influence, has played a very smart and very delicate diplomatic role in the middle of crises here and there. So it's very important for the two leaders to have this kind of consultation and make sure that everything is taking place with full coordination because of the critical situation that the whole region is witnessing.
Yes, speaking of coordination and cooperation, we've mentioned that a number of agreements were signed between President Abdel Fattah AlSissi and the Emir of Kuwait on Sunday. One of them is about security, the security of both nations. How do you see the importance of trading information between Egypt and Kuwait?
I'll comment, of course, on that agreement. But let's not forget one of the greatest statements that our president has said.
Yes.
And that was early in his presidential appointment and election, very early, when he said that anything happens to any of the Arab countries, it will be just like minutes or whatever time it will take to be there. It doesn't take a second thought to support the Arab nations, the Arab country, because of the brotherhood, because of the long history, because of all these things we share, and add to that because the safety and security of the Arab country is simply the safety and security of Egypt. So that's a given. I see, of course, that this specific agreement of safety and security between the two nations comes as a natural result for the Egyptian effort to maintain or put safety on the forefront of all our relations with other countries. But also, there has been, I think you and the viewers may remember, several military maneuvers, and I use that just as an example, for cooperation between Egypt, the Gulf countries, the Kuwaits, and so on, because we don't want to wait, heaven forbid, for something to happen, and then we start taking an action. All nations, whether they are in peace or otherwise, they all prepare for and they conduct these maneuvers. I'm using that again as an example.
Yes.
Just to reflect readiness, to reflect the strong will of leaders and of nations to cooperate and to be next to each other in time of trouble. I will also say that anyone who has been following the economic cooperation between the two nations, despite the hiccups in the economy and the fluctuation in the oil price up and down, the Kuwaiti investment have been among the highest in Egypt. And why I say that, because when you talk about safety, you talk about security, the economy is not far from this equation.
Yes.
It comes as let's say, two sides of the same coin to come to support the political effort, the political cooperation in this regard.
Yes, speaking of the economy, if we can focus on the bilateral ties in terms of economy and investment, President AlSissi also mentioned the joint Arab cooperation. We did see success on this front with Africa, as Egypt is heading the African Union for 2019. What are the steps that could and should be taken in the near future between the Arab countries, more specifically between Egypt and the Gulf countries, most of them anyway, to be boosting investments both sides and boosting the economies of both countries?
First of all, I love the question because Egypt has a unique status.
Yes.
And unique, of course, in a very positive term. Egypt is a key Arab country, is a key and a prime African country, is a key Muslim country. And geographically speaking, it comes almost exactly in the center between, in the middle of the Arab worlds and the connecting country between both the African Arab countries and the Asian ones. Now, Egypt, as you correctly state, of course, is heading the African Union, and let's applaud the president's effort going from France, from the G7 to Japan, TCAD 7, and then going to Kuwait. So it's an intensive diplomatic and political effort. But when you look at it deeply, you would see also there is a connecting thread in all of that. There is the Egyptian interest, there is the African interest, there is the Arab world interest, and there is the Egyptian pride and strength in making a good, clear, crystal clear case to the world about what Egypt is doing. And to address your question more directly, I would like to say that there has been for long, and I think you would agree with me on this, a lot of Arab investment in other parts in the world. Europe as an example. A couple of countries, of course, had 80 to 90%, these are true numbers, of all the Arab investment, let's say, outside the Arab world, the US as well. Now Egypt as the leader of the EU, and I think its leadership is not only limited to the 1 year or more chairmanship of the African Union, its leadership, but because of what Egypt is and what Egypt meant to Africa as a whole.
Yes.
So in this regard, Egypt will and is inviting Arab countries, brothers, nations, the Gulf countries, Kuwait and Saudi, also to gear more of their investment to Africa. And that reflects definitely on a flourishing relationship with Egypt itself, because also the Arab and the African countries both agree that Egypt is perhaps the pivotal or the most pivotal country in the region who is ready to do that because of its manpower, because of its geographic location, because of the Suez Canal, because of the Nile River and all these ambitious projects going, and the President mentioned that recently in Japan, Cairo, Cape Town, Mediterranean to Victoria Lake. All of these projects, if the Arab wealth and might join hands and pull it towards Africa, then it's a win-win situation for the Arab nations, whether they are located in Africa or otherwise, and Egypt and, of course, Africa as well.
Are there any other shared interests between Egypt and Kuwait aside from security and economy, in your opinion?
Yes, definitely. I would put on that the cultural and educational one.
Yes.
There is a historic role of Egypt played in the development of the human resources in Kuwait since the 60s, 70s, and particularly in the 80s and the 90s. Yes, we do realize that all Arab nations, and that's of course the right, try to capitalize on their own cadres, on their own manpower to let's say to capacity or to build the capacity for their own countries as such. But the Egyptian role and cooperation and the cultural one has been always active. There has been several weeks, cultural weeks between Egypt and Kuwait and the Gulf nations as well. From where I am as a professor, I have seen and several visits, not only me, several colleagues, and not only from my university, from other universities, try to extend cooperation with Kuwait and other Arab countries in the Emirates and Saudi Arabia. And I don't want to just limit to and forget any country, to try to have, let's say, technical research, academic research, exchange of students. These are not small items of cooperation. These are what shapes really nations, and what Arab countries, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, the Gulf, and in its entirety would benefit from Egyptian capacity in there, and would provide this kind of let's say, team building in terms of that. So I would, yes, definitely stress the cultural and educational element as such. Another element, and again, I like your question on that. Egypt is not the largest oil producing country.
Yes.
But Egypt is a big international power, knock on wood, on gas, but gas production, natural gas. Whether this or that, Egypt is seeking and has taken some serious steps in becoming the regional center for the trade and the let's say exchange of gas and petroleum in the region. And the industries that Egypt has started, the petrochemicals, the projects nearby or within the Suez Canal region, all of that are to attract Arab investment, and whether they have much petroleum or gas or less of this or that, the investment that takes place over there will be beneficial to all of them. You know, the viewers know that in nowadays economy, there is no one country who is doing everything. You buy a car from Europe, you may find 30 or 40% of its parts made in another continent as a whole.
Yes.
So this kind of cooperation and this kind of integration between these efforts is what makes the economy.
And we can benefit from that.
Definitely. And they do realize this. And I don't want to go off topic, but definitely that's a very relevant one, and particularly to your second part of the discussion, as you put in the introduction, the economic reform in Egypt and the enhancement, knock on wood, and the stability and the improvement in the economic indicators on various fronts is an encouraging sign for the investors, whether in the Gulf or elsewhere, and for African nations to rely on Egypt as being in that role and play that pivotal role as such.
Speaking of the Kuwaiti investments in Egypt and the volume of trade between both countries, do you see a possible boost in this field following the agreements that were signed today?
I definitely expect that. There has been some good cooperation in the past. I would particularly predict, and I think that's a calculated guess, not just a prediction, there will be more investment in the area of real estate, industrial cooperation, desert reclamation. All of these are projects that could be attractive to Kuwaitis. Kuwaitis are smart and shrewd businessmen that look for good businessmen and women. So they look for opportunities, and these are being created. When they see the new capital, the new administrative capital, I just want to say a side note that when some high caliber delegation from Africa visited the new administrative capital, as an example, they came back and talked to me and my colleagues. They were stunned. It's really impressive. You and me follow the news every day, but for someone coming from outside to see something on that magnitude, definitely, if you have a possibility of
and with that pace, a shock.
Truly, truly. And then the investment will come as let's say, a given. And again, the base is a country that's encouraging investment, that's, knock on wood, on a good economic standing, and the indications are so. Again, relevant to that, predictions from the economists, from other, let's say, international powerful economic authorities, is that what's happening in Egypt is not only limited to now, but all the projections are positive ones. We have to know that, we have to work to achieve that, but it's definitely showing that we are on the right track.
On the political level in the Middle East and the Arab world, how do you see the stance of Kuwait to several issues in the region, such as the Yemeni crisis, the tensions with Iran and Qatar as well?
Kuwaiti government and the Kuwaiti policy in general has always been quite shrewd and smart in this regard. Of course, they realize the kind of threats that are around them. They realize very well that they need the good cooperation first with their own cluster from the Gulf areas. Definitely, Kuwait has taken a brave stand against terrorism with all its shapes, condemned all the illegal, immoral, inappropriate acts that have been done here and there around in the Arab world. So they have been clear on that. Definitely, Kuwait has made a good, strong message to the world about its willingness to cooperate and to use diplomacy in the right way. So hosted different meetings and summits, I think you recall that as well, and also send messages to neighboring countries, trying to ask them to stop any act that could take the whole region. The problem in the Gulf area is not this country or that country. The problem, and I think you know that very well, is that once something happens, it will be, heaven forbid, out of control, and other forces outside the region will be the main beneficiaries, and everybody in the region, and maybe a little bit wider than that particular region, will be at loss. And we definitely don't want to have. And again, that brings me to the very wise and timely visit of our president to Kuwait, because, and also giving them the sense of security and safety and support that we are next to them for their safety, for the stability, and for all the years to come.
Do you see possible actions or steps by Egypt and Kuwait to be de-escalating tensions in the region?
I think when Egypt meets with Kuwait,
yes,
and Egypt, and again, when I say these things, I always say, knock on wood, like the 9th ranked army worldwide, very strong army, knock on wood, and an army that's well equipped, built, rebuilt, well trained. When nations in the region see that this kind of cooperation, this kind of determination and seriousness, not only by signing the agreement, which is important, by the presence of the president, by the affirmation of that, I think that in itself will make anyone who's trying to make an attempt to destabilize the area or make any kind of take any kind of risky movement will think twice or 3 times. Also, let's talk about the fact that there is a good group of countries in that region that not only are strong in their power, but also possess the wisdom to really understand what's going on and to try to. My own prediction is that this situation in the Gulf will deflate or will go down in the coming very few years. Why? Because it's causing the nations, different nations, quite a big loss economically, consumption of weapons, and distraction from them. And we don't want, Egypt does not enjoy throughout its history any kind of sanctions on any of the Arab countries. We do realize that governments could make mistakes here and there, but our relationship with the people, whether in Qatar or in other Arab country, are good ones, and nations that are wise will always make sure that their leaders wouldn't take them in the wrong way.
Yes, and speaking of the economic level of the bilateral ties between Egypt and Kuwait, and as Dr. Mohammed Naguib Abu Zeid mentioned in the first part of the program, that President AlSissi had a recent visit to France and participated in the G7 summit, and then in the TCAT 7 in Japan. Of course, the cooperation between Egypt and Africa and Japan, all this was tackled when President AlSissi visited Japan in the past week. And of course, the agreement signed today between President Abdel Fattah AlSissi and the Emir of Kuwait, all this and more, as we'll be focusing on the economic level of this visit and the economy of Egypt in general, following the implementation of the economic reform programs, and more specifically its effects on the small and medium enterprises. Let's see the upcoming report about them, and we'll be returning once again to you on the Daily Debate, so stay tuned.
Medium Enterprises Development Agency said it has pumped in the first half of 2019 a sum of £2.8 billion to support around 110,000 micro and small enterprises. In a statement, the agency said that such amount of money provided 147,000 job opportunities in addition to offering grants worth £35 million for infrastructure, community development and training projects. President Abdel Fattah AlSissi had repeatedly directed the agency to support the sector of micro, small and medium-sized enterprises, MSMEs, as they contribute to securing thousands of jobs for young people and enhancing citizens' standards of living. A number of projects are being carried out in some areas by the agency, notably a project to turn some public transportation vehicles to run on natural gas, and another one to develop industrial complexes in the city of 10th of Ramadan. The agency said that it would double the maximum funding for non-banking financial institutions and new industrial projects from 75 million Egyptian pounds to 150 million. The agency members also approved a draft of agreements to support the development of MSMEDA sector, including 5 deals worth €50 million with the German Development Bank.
Welcome back. You're still watching the Daily Debate, and from the first part of the program, focusing on the presidential activities in the past week, and on Sunday, more specifically, the visit of President Abdel Fattah AlSissi to Kuwait, to the second part of the Daily Debate, focusing on the economic level of Egypt nowadays and the economic achievements following the implementation of the economic reform program, and more specifically, its effects on the SMEs here in the country. And Dr. Mohammed Naguib, Abou, Zeid, we've mentioned in the first part of the program the visits of President Abdel Fattah AlSissi, the participation of President AlSissi in the G7, and then in the TCAD7, and then the visit to Kuwait. If we can start with the visit to Japan, because it came just before the visit to Kuwait. How do you see the results of such a participation for Egypt heading the African Union and its bilateral ties with Japan now?
I will start by saying President was, as always, very well received by the Japanese authorities, by the Prime Minister, by all the Japanese, let's say, higher-ranking officials. It's important to note that because it reflects also the status that Egypt occupies and the President, is possessing among the top countries in the world.
Yes.
Japan is the third economy in the world. The results of this meeting or of this gathering about the TCAD, first it comes to strengthen, as you adequately stated, the Egypt leadership to Africa as an AU president, the African Union president. I have to say, over the years there have been several, I don't mean one country in particular, honestly, but I mean different presidents and different leaderships. Some of them we felt their effect, some we didn't. But let's look at ourselves now. After 6 months, or maybe a little bit more, of the leadership of Egypt, there has been numerous meetings, numerous agreements signed. What always attracts me and takes my attention in that is they were not just agreements and speeches given, but there was also a roadmap for how to do this thing. There was a clear invitation. And there were 3 axes for movement. The first one is the supporting and developing the infrastructure. The second one was about the actually vitalizing and activating the free trade agreement and working with the African people in general to work with Japan as such. I like to state here that Japan has been one of the most, if not the most historic superpower that has been cooperating with Africa. And again, the viewers know very well and have witnessed over the past very few years there has been some kind of competition, some kind of let's say, kind of, there was something called in California, in the US, the gold rush. There is some kind of rush for Africa because it is the future for investment. So you have Japan there that has a good, reliable partner, which is Egypt in this case, to lead Africa for this kind of investment. So similar, and I like the similarity you put in a question between Kuwait and Japan, with the whole difference in the context of both, but definitely again, Japan finds in Egypt the good partner to make this thing a reality. The president provided a vision for Africa when it comes to this kind of cooperation. Something I would say, and I think the viewers I would like them over the coming months and inshallah years to witness that, a good sign always and a good let's say distinctive mark of our leadership, and namely the president in this regard, we start something, we follow up on it, we have indicators, we come back again and see what happened, and we continue on that. So
it's not just an initiative.
Exactly.
And then leave it.
Years ago, and I'm saying like 13 years ago, I was sitting with one good leader from one of the nations who happened to be a friend, and told me that the thing that disappointed him the most is that he signed so many agreements and he leaves office without seeing many of them coming to reality.
Yes.
We owe that to our people. Africa and Egypt are countries that are mainly developing countries. Of course, Egypt is in a better position than many other countries, but we are also striving with Africa to go into a higher level. How can you do that if you don't really put these things into actions? And again, the president, and I think in Japan there were the representatives of different continental banks like the African Development Bank, the Asian Development Bank, the World Bank, asking them, and the president used the word, I request for them to put the necessary funds and necessary support, because some of that could come as grants, some of that should come as loans, but quite easy loans to allow the continent and the countries to flourish and make use out of it.
How do you see the focus of, as you said, Doctor, the focus of Japan, the focus of China as well on Africa in the future? How can this be beneficial for the continent and for Egypt in specific?
Okay. As viewers may have followed also on news on this, there is some kind of inclination and preference of the African nations for cooperation with Japan and China and these countries a little bit more than other, and I hate to say that, but because of the history of colonization and so on, other countries, of course, this is not at all to exclude any country. We welcome, and the President welcome all the investment from all these countries. But what I'm saying,
discovering new grounds.
Exactly, and the diversification. I mean, you cannot be just, the same countries that have been present for hundreds of years on this continent are the only countries that are investing there. I have to say that China has been ahead in this race in Africa more than any other country. And of course, and that's no wonder why China in a decade or two became by far the second largest economy in the world. I mean, it's the US, China, and then quite a gap, and then comes Japan, and then Germany.
Yes.
So what I'm saying is that this opportunity is being created by two mighty economies, the second and the third economies in the world, which is China and Japan, to cooperate in Africa. One thing good about this kind of cooperation also is that these countries are mainly labor-intensive countries. They have very good level of technology, but they are labor-intensive, talking about hundreds of millions. In case of China, it's billion plus. So we're talking about some kind of investment that are not just on the high-tech level, but ones that will create many jobs that will make several of these countries have in Africa and as well in Egypt benefit from these projects. So that's a characteristic thing in this kind of cooperation.
Yes, Egypt is currently one of the fastest growing economies in the world, following China and India. How do you see the effects of the economic reform program that were implemented already, and of course the future of Egypt following the implementation of such a program?
Lovely question again. Egypt is number 3.
Yes.
And the nice thing that I have to say next to that is that it's predicted to be from 5.6, 5.7 to go and cross the 6%, let's say, barrier or threshold for the economic growth in the coming decades. So it's expected to be, inshallah, continuing like that to the year 2030 and beyond. Actually, they say 2039, which is an important thing. The economic growth, and I will never cease to repeat this important fact, it's not just a statement, economic growth has to continue for a good number of years. It's the way to harvest an economic growth is not to achieve it in 1 year. And again, the economic growth is happening in Egypt while Egypt is surrounded by a bit of instability. I'm just using a nice word, a bit of instability in the region. And amid that, the world economy as a whole is not experiencing growth. The average growth in the world economy is 2-something%. So when you are more than double the economic growth of the entire world, then you're doing something right. So I see very positive, not just me and the monetary funds, all the assessment of the economic agents and so on, specialized magazines, all of that see this kind of economic growth and see it as a positive one. The one element here is that Egypt is focusing, and that brings me again to your introduction about small and medium enterprise.
Yes.
And this nice report is you try to make sure that this economic growth is going also on a horizontal level in a good way, that there is some kind of near or close to equal kind of opportunity among the people and the nation. If this economy was just based on mighty heavy industry, for example, then you would see and private sector only concentrating on these big companies, you wouldn't have seen this, or you'd have seen a huge inequality in the distribution of wealth and so on. So there is a social level and element in this economic growth that Egypt is paying attention to through the small and medium enterprises, among other things.
Yes, how do you see the importance of the small and medium enterprises to the employment in the country and, of course, to the overall performance of the economy?
Let me just share with the viewers the following facts. More than 80 or 85%,
yes,
in some statistics it's 90% of the companies or economic entities in the world are small and medium enterprises, not bigger, in terms of their numbers. That's not, of course, to say that the 80 or 90% of the people work on them because they are small in numbers. They are categorized based, one of their categorization based on the number of people working each one of them. So the importance, there are so many advantages and role that they play. And if I were to focus, for the sake of discussion, on the Egyptian economy in particular, it creates a better platform for wealth for less advantaged people. It creates job opportunities, not just quantitatively, but qualitatively. What do I mean by that? I mean that opens the door for new ideas, for some kind of innovation. And innovation here does not only limit itself to the scientific breakthrough. It could be a simple man find in certain area that it needs, let's say, a sandwich stand or tea and coffee stand, something like that.
Yes.
So it's a small project. He or she gets a loan, and then in a very short amount of time becomes a store, and maybe later on becomes chain of stores and so on. So it starts small, and if it follows the normal pattern of growth, it becomes less small or from micro to small to medium and so on. So it creates quantitatively and qualitatively good job opportunities. The remote areas, there are areas, if I were to give an example, and this example we really should not expand on it too much,
yes,
and I want it to be a legalized one, those who are driving small vehicles or tuk-tuks here and there. They reach with the passengers areas that no other means of transportation would reach there. Until the government or the community builds a better, let's say underground or metro or you can rely on them to play that kind of role, provided again that they are not excessive, they are not abusing on the resources, on the environment. So they play an important role in the remote areas or less advantaged area. Again, one of the great advantages of small and medium enterprises, I think you will agree with me, Egypt or Egyptian economy has a huge informal sector.
Yes.
Informal sector. I hope these days will never come back, but years ago, before, let's say 2012, 2013 to 2011, you would go in downtown, not far away from Maspiro here. And
you wouldn't walk. You couldn't walk.
The streets are closed, people are selling clothes, and this informal sector. Of course, we sympathize with their need of jobs. Of course, we would like to see these people having a decent job.
And we have better employment now.
Exactly. We have better employment, we transfer them to another area. If you create small and medium entities, I don't want to call it company, entity, 2 or 3 people, just a micro one, then one great advantage you're doing is that you're moving them from being totally informal into people who are under your eyes in the economy. You don't have, I mean, they could be still tax exempted for one reason or another, but they are insured. And one of the great things I have to say, because things are interrelated, the president, if you remember, less than a year ago, he started a very ambitious program to try to put all these people under some kind of social security system. There are people who work as labor and laymen and things like that. If heaven forbid they fall from scaffold or something in a building, nothing happens to their family except little charity here or there by someone.
Pensions,
no
payments,
pension, nothing.
Yes.
So you try to integrate all these things together as such. A great, and I will just say this as a last point for now, advantage of the small and medium enterprise, their flexibility. It's a flexible entity. If you have a mighty industry for iron and steel or petrochemicals, of course, if the prices of oil or steel goes a little bit up or a little bit down, you wouldn't change the activity. You would maybe have different kind of products, market differently, change your prices and so on. But small and medium enterprise is characterized by the fact their ability to change their activity. This small enterprise, instead of selling this and this and that, if I were to give just an example, those who are formally working in the area of let's say, fruits and vegetables, they go by the season. If they have some industry built on these products to have more of value added, then definitely, if they are out of season on this, then they will do it on another industry or another crop or another thing.
Another job for another season.
Exactly. And this kind of flexibility makes the economy as a whole diverse and provide at a certain stage some kind of products for the larger size industry and so on.
Yes, about 2.8 billion Egyptian pounds were pumped by the Egyptian Small and Medium Enterprises Development Agency here in the country to be providing about 111,000 entities in the country for the first half of 2019 alone. How do you see this number and the importance of pumping such money in the economy?
I see it as a large number. Not large for the mission, but large because we've never seen anything like that before. The good thing about pumping or providing this kind of fund, it creates a model, it creates a direction that needs to be followed, and you will hear people hear from one another and they try to follow suit to try to get or harvest the benefits of this kind of support. I have to say that it's not just the loans that are being given.
Yes.
Loans are important, but if you have an idea, your idea, fikretak, if you have an idea, this idea, you may have it as a draft or an aggregate one, not refined. If you come to me with a good idea, I have the expert or the expertise, or will seek the expertise that will make your idea a little bit refined, more let's say, capable of achieving success.
So the young entrepreneurs, they need guidance.
Definitely.
And they need training, not just money.
Definitely. And that's another good point you're raising, and it was in the nice report that you presented, the training. Okay, you're going to start this project on this. If you're talking about food industry, the training, how you do that, the hygiene precautions, all these kind of things. I'm just using very simple examples here, if you allow me. The training, the kind of support you have. So, because if this man or woman starts a project and heaven forbid does not have good success, everybody will suffer. Those who lend him the money will suffer. the whole experience as a project or as a direction of small enterprise will not really rise high with good examples, and he or she will suffer for years to try to make up for the loss. I would like to add to that also that Egypt has for years been keen on trying to change the mentality of people to try to graduate and work in the government. The governmental body in Egypt is one of the largest, I think it's the second largest in the world, even though that there are many countries bigger or higher in population. Very huge kind of governmental budget.
Heading to security and not taking risks.
Exactly. So you have now a larger opportunity to have to let's say to go away or to slim yourself away from the governmental sector and create the job definitely that you will seek and you will like. Let's not forget the role of technology.
Yes.
Technology makes small and medium enterprises more of a success, and I can discuss that if you want some other time, but definitely nearby your home, nearby your village, within that you can do a lot of things by the e-commerce and so on.
Yes, and having you once again on the Daily Debate would be a pleasure. Dr. Mohammed Naguib Abou Zeid, the professor at the American University in Cairo. Thank you very much for being with us today on the Daily Debate.
Thank you for having me. All of the pleasure.
The pleasure is all mine. And this brings us to the end of the Daily Debate for tonight. Thank you for watching and goodbye.